Good morning, everybody. It's a little later than I normally get out here, but I had to wait for the sun to come out and do its job because it was down, I think, to 40 degrees last night. Now, that's nothing that, we can't live with, and it's certainly better than the winter. But we've been in the 60s at night, and all of a sudden it goes to the 40s, so just got to keep used to the changes. Well, today we're going to talk about what seems to be happening around the world. It's promoting fear. You look at all the things going on, they're not doing anything major. Things are happening and they're not good, but the major things that could be happening are not happening, but they're creating fear. We have a train derailment. And in a couple of cases, they really did cause some major damage. The Ohio one with the pollutants, that was pretty bad. We got some river barges the last couple of days, just got, loose. Again, carrying hazardous material. See the pattern? They're all hazardous material. It's time to be panicked. What are we going to do? We're going to sit calmly and thank God that we're still alive and that He's there with us. And we're not going to let it get to us. I've done a video in the past or two on fear and why you needn't worry about this stuff. It's going to happen. But that seems to be one of the underlying tools. Satan's multi-talented. Not for the good, but I'm not saying he's not multi-talented. He is multi-talented. He's just in anything that he can use to oppose God or to make our life miserable, he's going to try to do it up to the point that God lets him. And as the further we get towards the tribulation time frame and the bad stuff coming, the more God's letting him have his freedom. But there's going to be a point where that's going to stop because we're in the way. That's the good news. And I've talked about this before, that in the Bible there's, I think, 365 uses of the word, do not be afraid. Words, do not be afraid. That's one for every day if you want to get your verses out on our calendar. There's extras on the Jewish calendar. One of the reasons you don't want to be afraid is, one, you don't do things that God wants you to do because you're afraid. And we've all been there. If you've never done something for the first time, you're afraid to do it. Now, if you can power through it, that's good. Or if you can just put yourself in a situation where you don't have a chance to back out, then you make the best of it. In which case, just surviving it is a win. I was afraid to speak in front of people and to get up and do what I'm doing now. I was afraid to do that because I was shy growing up. Hard to believe that now, but I was. I don't have a problem now. Now, I can still find people that will intimidate me, and I will be nervous to speak in front of it, but I'm not incapable of doing it now. But here's the thing. If Satan can keep the whole world on edge, that everybody is nervously looking around, wondering what's going to happen next. When's the next shoe going to drop? It's a distraction. That's what it is. It also is helpful in the fact that if you're walking around fearful and then applying that anxious because you're focusing on the fear, and therefore you're going to have all the symptoms of being anxious. The oxymoron of being anxious is you have lack of sleep. So you're tired, you're fatigued, but yet you can't sleep. That's the oxymoron, because you can't shut your mind off. It also affects the immune system. Anxiety and fear causes a overproduction of cortisol, which is it's a chemical to help the body times of stress. Kind of the alarm system for the body, puts everybody on notice. Stop doing unnecessary things and let's focus on the problem. Well, that means it cuts back on antibody production because that's considered an unnecessary thing. But that means you're more susceptible to catching things because you don't have the antibodies to protect the body. Whenever the body starts cutting back, it's not good if it's long term. You can overwork a muscle to the point where the muscle starts to degrade and not increase. We've learned through years of muscle building how to build a muscle up. You don't work it beyond fatigue, beyond the breaking point. You work it up to the breaking point. You let it recover. Then you work it up to the breaking point again. If you go past it, it begins tearing down. Diets. You can go on such a strict diet that your body begins to burn muscle. There's not enough fat left, so it's going to burn muscle. So those are things where you can overwork the body. Stress overworks the body. And the devil knows it. He knows how we're designed just as well as God does. You know, as with everything with Satan, he gets to maybe 99%. God knows that extra 1%. And I'm just pulling numbers out of the air. The bottom line is God always knows more than the devil does, but the devil knows a lot, especially about how to deal with us here in these sinful bodies on this earth as it is now. He's really good with that, and he knows how to get into our mind, and the only protection we've got at the spiritual level is to rely on the Spirit of God in us. That's the only protection you've got. You can't, we talk about putting on the armor of God. If he's setting up an environment that we're affected by, if he's making us afraid, that's letting the outside inside when we shouldn't. That's like opening your front door when there's a storm outside and you're getting water in on your carpet. Or if you've got hardwoods, whatever, you're letting water in. Close the door. Close the curtains if you have to. Don't look outside. Now if you live in Tornado Alley, that, go to your basement and then don't look outside. You can be foolish with anything, but shutting things off that are bothering you, that's something that sometimes takes practice. It takes faith and application. Have the, there's enough verses, just pick your favorite, handful of verses of do not be afraid and just put them on your refrigerator, put them wherever you can see them. Put them above your desk at home or whatever you've got. And just focus on those. Don't be afraid. Jesus told us about what's coming in the future. And then he added to that, don't be afraid. He knows everything that's coming. There's a tree going to fall in the forest. Will you hear the sound? Well, God already has. So he knows everything. So you've got to trust him. If you've never done something before, pray to God and be prepared. If you've got to get up in front of people and speak, practice your speech. Everything you do gets better when you repeat it. And ask God to be there and help you, help encourage you to have no fear, to be able to speak on a subject that you've done some work on. So hopefully in that area you know more than the audience. You got to believe that. Find somebody you know in the seats that you can either focus on or just simply look at the back wall. If you're looking at the back wall, people don't know you're not looking at them because if you move around, if you just stand up there and just stare at the back wall and talk, you're going to sound mechanical and it's not going to be effective. But if you're looking around like you're talking to people, like I'm talking to you, yeah, I'm talking to you, man, yeah. If you're talking to people, they get the personal feeling about what you're saying and they'll accept it better. But you got to do this stuff. And just like anybody who does a stage performance, whether they're a singer, whether they're a comedian, whatever, comedians are the best one for this. You've got to have multiple runs. You've got to have multiple sets of jokes. You've got to read your audience. If you're doing something about people in the South are really dumb, which is not, that's a caricature. It's not true, but it's a caricature. You don't get away with those in the South. You might get away with that in the North. So you've got to find out how to work with whatever's going on. And again, you look at what's happening. All the train derailments. Fear. Because they're all carrying hazardous material. Russia just moved a bunch of nuclear missiles closer to Europe. Close to the Ukraine. Russia's way up north. You know, if they were to launch a nuclear missile from Siberia, we wouldn't know it was coming. We wouldn't get any warning, at least for, 10, 15 minutes. And that's an eternity in surprise attacks with missiles. The Ayatollahs in Iran saying they can launch a missile now, their new high-speed missiles, in 400 seconds. 6 minutes and 66 seconds. Fear. That's all it is fear. By positioning all these missiles around Israel, it's fear. They could have used them at any time. They're not using them. Now, they may still do it, but they haven't used them up to this point. You don't put something in place if you're intending to use it and just let it sit there. They're getting old. The parts are wearing out. They've been there for years. The ones they launched from Gaza were the cheapest ones they had. They were probably about ready to take them away and put them in landfills after they de-arm them. Not usable anymore. So somebody came up with the idea, well, why don't we just shoot these bottle rockets at Israel and create fear? And they did. 4,000 missiles later. But they weren't guided by any means. Even guided ones can be shot down by Iron Dome. And they shot down, 98%, whatever they were. Now these high-speed ones, that's a little different because I don't know that they can pick up on those. They do have a new laser system, but it hasn't been fully tested yet. Not in combat anyway. It's going to get to a point where Israel can't defend itself. Our illustrious leaders in our government are basically blowing smoke at this point. That's the nicest way I can say it. Enough so that Israel is looking to see if they can find an ally anyplace else in the world. And that's going to be difficult because in the end times they're going to be finding themselves alone. Just them and God, the way it's supposed to be. But it's fear. So don't let this stuff get you. It will hurt your health. It may prevent you from doing something. Like, I was going to go to this city and do this, but now that they've got all this stuff going on, I'm afraid to go. See? I didn't bring my drink down here. I'm a person of habit. I've got to have a habit of bringing a drink with me. Otherwise, I don't. I've still got this little bit of a dry cough. And this cold air isn't helping anything, and it's also not helping my joints. All right. Stay in the Word. The best way to keep bad things out is to not leave room for bad things. Satan can't get in and indwell us if we have the Spirit in us. If you're not a Christian, you're fair game. So you need to be a Christian. You need to let Christ into your life, and then he can put the Spirit in you. He's going to make that connection that we're designed with. There's no such thing as an atheist. Because if there's an atheist, then you know everything. And if you know everything, you know God exists. In which case, you're an oxymoron. All atheism is a pass the buck. I don't want to admit to anything right now. That's all it is. Nobody can truly deny God. We're here. You just don't want to talk about it, because then that means you would have to think about what you're doing. And God has limits to what we can do. We can be forgiven repeatedly, but only after we're Christians. Prior to that, you're on your own. And the things that's coming to this world, it's happening to the world because the world is rejecting God. Individually, we can accept Christ or deny Christ. And there are enough of us here that are keeping the world from being totally overrun. That's one of the reasons we got to get out of here, because we're restraining the work of Satan. But we are here, so we got to make the most of it. We can't let any of the things that are going on around us affect us. Yes, there are tragedies. The school shootings are tragedies. And then you watch the media and they go, well, these Christians, it didn't help them to be Christians. They still got shot up. That's the media. Who owns the media right now? Satan. When you hear them talk, imagine Satan sitting there talking. And he's not sitting there in a red suit with horns and a pitchfork. He's sitting there in a business suit or whatever they're dressed as. Imagine if they're talking on the media, the mainstream media. Imagine Satan sitting there and just accept everything that they say with that in mind. It's Satan talking. Because that's who it is. He's controlling them. Now, it may not be him directly. It may be a demon. It may just be them, because they've turned God off, and everything they say is going to be anti-God. You can't be for God and talk against him. You have to be anti-God to talk against him. They will pay a price. The world will pay a price. There's a fiery pit waiting for those that want to follow Satan. They are getting pushback against some of the diverse teaching that they want in there. The drag queen stuff is having a major effect on communities, and they're doing what they can to stop it. So it's not going over like they thought, or it's having the chaos like they wanted. The fear again. Jesus says, don't be afraid, for I have overcome the world. There's nothing to fear, not even death, because he's overcome that as well. As I'm talking to people, people get uncomfortable. I can tell when they've got a Christian background, and I start talking and they get uncomfortable. It's like they know what they should be doing and they're not doing it. They're just living their life for the pleasure of it and not for the spirit of it. I can tell when I'm making people uncomfortable. In Christ's name, and it's good. All right, I'm going to cut this one a little bit short because I feel a massive coughing spell coming on. I'm going to go take some cough syrup. And I got to remember to carry my lozenges down here with me and something to drink. I need my backpack. That's what I need, because my backpack's, I left it in storage because I thought my son was coming and I was trying to downsize everything I could until I see how much I can put in the in the car with him in there. He's had to delay his trip, which we're looking at maybe the 25th, 26th of April. He still needs help to stay there, so if you can contribute to a site, that would be great for all of us, because if you don't, I contribute, and that makes me short, so got to keep him over there working. I'm trying to get him to start doing more online stuff. If I can get him here, I'm going to try to teach him how to do videos. It would be great for him to be in a classroom teaching English with some students there and putting the video up. I can imagine what we should be doing, but I got to get him here to do it. I can't do it over the wires, especially since he's got his phone turned off because he's with Verizon and they charge him a lot of money to turn his phone on. When he gets here, I'm going to switch him to T-Mobile because they charge very little. It can be on all the time, and you get charged a few extra cents per minute to talk. But if you're not talking, you're not being charged. Verizon charges you just to be there. So he's got his, cell part of his phone turned off. He can use Wi-Fi, but we can only text. He never has a strong Wi-Fi, and I certainly haven't until recently. All right. Be safe. Keep your eyes looking up. Keep your lamps full. Don't be afraid. There's nothing out there that God cannot know about, have provisions for, have you protected, or have you the strength to handle. All from God. Till we meet in the clouds. Okay, the river is down quite a bit. One, you can see the boat ramp across the way, and you can see here. Now, right there, as you can see the water line, that's not as high as it got, but that's what it was yesterday. And it hasn't had time to get the sun on it and dry out yet, all the way down to there. That's how much it's gone down. A lot of water. And the river is relatively clear of garbage, which looks a lot better. Going back to my seat, I just love that spot. It's got sun on it this morning. It's a little cool.